If you've been scrolling through endless rows of pre-built gaming rigs, comparing core counts, GPU badges, and price tags, and you still feel that nagging dash, will this actually run the games I love without blowing my budget? You're not alone. I've spent the past week setting up the CyberPowerPC Gamer Xtreme, running a mix of AAA titles, a few indie experiments, and even a couple of productivity sessions, just to see where the hype meets reality. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the thing that trips most people up with any pre-built is the balance between raw specs and the actual experience you get out of the box. This model ships with an Intel Core i7-14700F, a GeForce RTX 5060 Ti, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD. On paper that's a solid mid-high tier setup for 1080p 1440p gaming, but the devil is in how those components are paired and cooled. The case is the usual tempered glass side panel with a splash of RGB that CyberPower likes to throw in, but the real story is the airflow design. The front intake is a single 120mm fan, and the rear exhaust is another 120mm. In my testing, the system stayed under 75 degrees during marathon sessions of Cyberpunk 2077 on medium-high settings, which is decent for a compact tower, but you'll notice the fans kick in a bit louder once you push past 80 degrees in more demanding titles like Red Dead Redemption 2. If you're sensitive to noise, a modest aftermarket fan upgrade or a slightly larger case could smooth that out. What matters to most gamers is how quickly you can jump into a game after hitting the power button. The 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD shaved off most of the loading lag I've grown accustomed to with older SATA drives. Load times in Assassin's Creed Valhalla dropped from around 45 seconds on a conventional drive to roughly 12 seconds here, and the SSD had no trouble keeping up when I ran multiple games side by side with a streaming session in the background. That said, the drive is a single 1TB unit, so if you plan to store a large library of modern titles, you'll probably need an external or secondary internal drive sooner rather than later. The good news is the case has extra 2.5-inch bays and an M.2 slot, so expanding storage is straightforward. Now, who should actually consider buying this rig? If you're a gamer who primarily plays at 1080p or 1440p, wants to hit 60 frames per second on most new releases without tweaking settings to the extreme, and you value a ready-to-play experience without the headache of picking compatible parts, this is a sensible choice. The RTX 5060 Ti isn't the flagship GPU, but it handles ray-traced shadows in games like Control at medium settings while keeping frame rates respectable. The 16GB of DDR5 is enough for the current generation, and the 32GB upgrade path is there if you ever need it for heavy modding or content creation. The inclusion of Wi-Fi ready hardware also means you can skip a separate network card if you're using a wireless router, which is a small but nice convenience. On the flip side, you should skip this PC if you're chasing 4K ultra-high settings or plan to dive deep into VR at the highest fidelity. The RTX 5060 Ti, while competent, will start to bottleneck you when you push past 1440p with maxed-out textures. Also, the case is fairly compact, so overclockers looking to push the i7-14700F beyond its stock boost clocks may run into thermal headroom issues without a more robust cooling solution. The pre-installed RGB lighting is mostly aesthetic and adds a tiny amount of power draw. If you prefer a silent, minimalist setup, you'll probably want to turn those strips off or replace the lighting entirely. One practical strength that often gets overlooked in spec sheets is the bundled keyboard and mouse. CyberPower includes a basic wired combo that, while not a high-end gaming peripheral, is functional out of the box. I was able to start a multiplayer session within minutes, no driver installations needed. This saves new builders a few extra dollars and a handful of minutes configuring peripherals. The downside is that the mouse is low DPI and the keyboard lacks mechanical switches, so if you're used to tactile feedback, you'll want to upgrade fairly quickly. Another area where the Gamer Xtreme shows its value is the free lifetime tech support that comes with the 1-year parts and labor warranty. I ran into a minor driver conflict after a Windows update, and the support team walked me through a clean reinstall in under half an hour. That kind of assistance can be a lifesaver if you're not comfortable troubleshooting hardware issues on your own. Keep in mind, though, that the warranty only covers parts and labor for a year. Beyond that, you'll be on your own for any component failures. From a daily usability standpoint, the system boots to Windows 11 Home in about 12 seconds, and the desktop feels responsive when I launch Chrome with 10 tabs, run Discord, and stream a game via OBS. The 16 GB of RAM isn't a bottleneck for multitasking, and the DDR5 speed gives a slight edge in memory-intensive scenarios like large mod packs.